Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone on the second day of the Future of Agritech. Our event is organized within the framework of X-Europe and EU-funded project of Horizon 2020. My name is Attila Hudec and I'm the CEO of Growberry and I will be your host this morning. Design Terminal is the leader of the second cohort of the X-Europe program, which puts Agritech in focus. We will be joined by two startup founders from the Agritech cohort, Dror Tamir, the CEO of Hargo Foodtech, and Kirill Zelensky, the CEO of Intellectual Farms. They will share their side of the Agritech story. Today, we will also continue the great flow of conversations that we had yesterday. This morning, we will also discuss the food choices of tomorrow. Let's find out how food will change in the future. Our first debate is going to be about the food factories versus the farmers market. And the main question is there a difference between a farmer's market and a grocery store? And is one better than the other? And this is the question we are seeking the answer for with my two guests, Réka Szőlősi and Gábor Bertényi. Welcome. Are you guys online? Sorry. Réka? Gábor?
Yeah.
OK. Hello. I just saw you. Sorry. OK. Can you just briefly introduce yourself? Réka, would you please start?
Hello. So I am representing the Federation of Responsible Hungarian Food Industries. And this is the biggest horizontal trade association in Hungary interested in food production. And I have been working here for more than 10 years now. And actually, I am the communications lead and regulatory manager of the Federation. Thank you,
Réka. Gábor?
So good morning, everyone. I'm Gábor Bertényi. Many thanks for the invitation for this high-profile talk. I'm representing, as a founder, Agritech, a small consultancy company working in the field of sustainable rural development. And for the last, let's say, 12 years, we are developing and testing different, mostly business-based models on sustainable local food systems. And I think that's it.
OK, cool. Thank you. Réka, first question is to you. So how did you end up working for FACE?
Well, it's an interesting question. All my professional life, I've been involved with food production. I started as a translator specialized in agriculture and the Common Agricultural Policy of the EU. And then I worked for the Ministry of Agriculture. And then I very often flew to Brussels to represent Hungary in Council and Commission working groups dealing with foodstuffs. And for more than 10 years, as I said, I'm working for the Federation, which is, I think, interesting from all of this. Is not my CV, but the fact that if there is something, what I learned is that it's very vital and important to get to know all the possible aspects of food production or any system if you want to change it. So I'm very proud of these experiences and try to do my best to help Hungarian food system to evolve and develop.
Great. A quick question. I know that you just recently changed the name of your association, your organization. So what was the reason behind that change?
Yeah, I think this is also an interesting thing because trade associations are places where companies are thinking and discussing very, very important issues. And now we wanted to change the name because we wanted to symbolize somehow the fact that how our members see the future. I mean, they think and we believe that in the 21st century, it's not anymore the size of the company or the actual nationality of its owner that matters, but rather this is the way, the functioning of the company itself that is important. I mean, as a food company, you have to be responsible towards the society, the environment, and the economy. So somehow we wanted to highlight this fact that the challenges ahead can be only solved that if companies think that way.
Mm-hmm. OK. Gábor, I know that you have founded one of the coolest places in Budapest, Simpla Kert. And now you are very, very deeply involved in farming. So this is quite a big change. So how did this happen?
Well, that might sound a bit strange, but I think no major dramatic transformation has happened in the course of the last 15 years. Actually, I've always been deeply interested in ecological sustainability and good food and gastronomy. So finally, I just had to combine these two. But maybe one catalyzing or really decisive event in my life was that I moved to the countryside with great hopes that finally I will be able to get the right food. And I got very much despaired when I saw that people in the countryside are eating by and large the same supermarket food uh, that I was when I lived in the capital for a couple of years. So we started to organize a farmers market, and that was the time when we had to realize that structurally and fundamentally, the whole condition of regional and local agriculture is somehow derailed, and we had to fix and revitalize and reanimate uh, complex structures of local agriculture. And I think that was the exact time when this kind of long distance journey in the agri-food field for me has begun. And since then, we have done quite a lot of things. We, as I said, organized quite a lot of farmers markets. But even back then, just like 15 years ago, we used to have a small restaurant in the Simpla ecosystem, and we experimented on running that exclusively on supplies of neighboring farmers market. It's just to illustrate that it's not a brand new issue in my life, so it keeps recurring and happening. Mm-hmm. But now it's a full-time activity in the field of rural development, as I said.
Okay. Now that we know a bit more about yourselves and the background, so when I prepared for this conversation, I was expecting to be on yourselves on the totally opposite end of the scales in terms of which is the better, the the farmers market or the grocery stores. But when I've spoken to Reka, I learned that it's not quite the case. So Reka, can you just please elaborate? What do you think should happen to in terms of the food processing industry to make this a sustainable world, a bit more sustainable?
Well, I think, as I said, we all have to know, all the stakeholders, every aspects that is around this question, because I think we tend to forget that in the 21st century, the Earth's global food system or food production system is very, very, very complex. Can you imagine being an astronaut and going to the moon and looking down to the Earth? Then you will see an enormous anthill in which huge quantities of raw materials, packaging materials, semi-finished products are being transported, stocked in warehouses or in grocery stores, and then transported to actual consumers' homes. So this is a very huge complex. We need to educate the consumers and educate all the stakeholders that if you want to change this very, very complex system, that everyone has to cooperate. And the old debate between the farmers market and grocery stores has to be finished, I think, because it simply doesn't solve our problems. So what we need to know that and make consumers know together, farmers and food manufacturers and politicians together, that this very complex system can only be changed if everyone goes for the same objectives. So it's no time anymore for debates. We have to understand that maybe in very few decades there will be 10 billion people on the earth that have to be nourished, and so I think we have to work together and cooperate. That's all. There is no more debate, no more place for debate.
Gabor, what do you think? Would you like to react to what Reka said?
Just reflecting upon that very briefly, that as I said, farmers markets are really on my heart, and I spent extreme amount of time of my life organizing them. But at that point, I really have to admit that they cannot be considered as a valid leverage point to solve all the structural problems of local agriculture, because it's simply not their function. So even if there was a threefold increase in the numbers of farmers markets in the last decade, I think the average ratio of people going to farmers markets and getting their farm food from them is definitely not above 5%. And it's a kind of, and I think I'm way too optimistic with this figure. So there seems to be a kind of stagnation, despite of the fact that the public discourse is really encompassing sustainability, and there is a kind of so-called greenish, let's say there is a kind of gastro-revolution really going on with a greenish shade. But how deep this green layer or green shade is, that's a quite crucial question. And I can completely relate to Reka's persuasion that we really have no time. So it's farmers markets are a kind of shop window for city dwellers to reconnect them to nature, agriculture, countryside, and stuff like that. But they cannot be regarded as a kind of magic tool or a magic instrument to solve everyday problems of the food systems. Mm-hmm. Having said that, it's also true that farmers markets are not extremely ideal even for the farmers, because normally it can be used as a kind of springboard or stepping stone or a transit zone. So they can try their best, and once they have the necessary audience or the necessary shoppers around them, they can simply increase the production, do some development at the farm, and become a supplier of, let's say, a high-profile restaurant. And that's a predictable curriculum for them. Mm-hmm. Unlike the farmers market, which is really, really time and energy demanding, and definitely not providing any developmental perspective, as we have seen. On the other hand, I'm quite happy that farmers markets are really in the middle of the conversation, just like here, because they kind of serve its purpose, that they smuggle the sustainability aspect back to the public discourse. And for the Hungarian scene, I think that's it for now.
Okay, and thanks for shedding some light on this topic. And I also want you to reflect on one of the points that Reka said earlier, that we need a coordination and working together. And I know that you have a recent story and that you managed to convince some folks in the Ministry of Agriculture to work together on a project. So can you tell us a little bit about that project and how did you manage to do that? Because we all know that it's not an easy job, at least not all the time.
It's definitely never an easy job. So, as I said, we have had quite numerous projects in the agri-food in the last 12 years. Not only farmers markets, we have had our own catering company relying exclusively on farm raw materials and ingredients. Now we have a small juice factory, and otherwise we have research in endless numbers, researching this short food supply chains and sustainable food systems topic. So we've been sitting at round tables for the last decade constantly, and we have kept relentlessly that one of the key learning, or maybe one of the most important aspects which has come out of all our projects, is that there has to be a quite transparent, accountable, and visible origin audit or quality assurance system, certifying all that kind of small-scale farm products, which is critically missing. Let it be a web shop or even a farmer's market, not to mention a global food supply chain. So we just kept pushing that, and now we have been commissioned to carry out a feasibility study how to do this. It's meant to be actually a business-to-business application, and we are connecting the HoReCa sector with small-scale farms. And the basic idea is that as we see by the global food supply chains, or let's say longer food supply chains, if there is any kind of quality assurance system, it's always a third party certification, let's say, just like the organic or fair trade or something. So there is a neutral, independent body who certifies a special kind of product. Unlike the short food supply chains, there are always some personal encounter with the farmer or with the representative of the farmer. There is a trust, so there is definitely some personal feedback. Now we just want to try to merge these two and to optimize it to feed the consumers practically with digestible information on one side about the sustainability profile of the farm, and on the other side about the product and the farmer itself, and there should be a community-based feedback. So it's just like a participatory guarantee system where you can actually intervene, and so that's it. So if we tend to believe the idealistic saying that the whole supply chain is not only pushed by the industry, but also pulled by the consumer, then we will have to be able to empower them and really to feed them some kind of edible information so that they can be able to decide consciously 77,000 times in an average lifetime and pay for the right kind of food.
Okay.
So more or less that's it.
Thank you, Gabor. And I think, Reka, there's something that I would like you to react on, is what Gabor said at the end, which is around, the customers accessing the right information. And I know that educating the customers is something that is very, very important for you, Reka. So, and I also understand that you have maybe a bit more resources being very close to the larger industries. So can you tell us how you think with those resources you can help the education? And yeah, just please go ahead.
Yes, I think education is key. So not only education of producers or companies, because they also need knowledge, that's for sure, but also the consumers. So we realized for a few years now that food industry has a rather bad reputation among consumers, and we thought about it, thought about the roots and the causes of it, and we found that consumers simply do not know that food production doesn't happen only in the company itself, food manufacturing company, but this is a chain, and the food company is only a link in a chain, sometimes an important link and sometimes a smaller one. So we systematically started inform consumers about not only the urban legends, but also facts about food production which are simply not known. So I think that whatever we want to change, we need to inform consumers and we need to go to the places where they are. So we go to the social media, we make podcasts, we make articles, and this will be a very long work. And I'm sure that maybe we should talk about the results in 10 years or 20 years, but really someone had to start it. So I'm very happy that I'm very happy to hear what Gabor said, and I think this is the most important thing, that every stakeholder starts to inform consumers, producers, and then I'm very optimistic that the younger generations will help us to change.
Okay. We only have 1 minute left, so I'm going to ask you to please answer very, very shortly. So I know that you haven't met before the meeting, and I know that both of you have emphasized the importance of working together. So will you get in touch with each other after the session so to figure out if we can help each other's mission? Reka, would you like to start?
Yes, we agreed on that already yesterday by briefly talking about today's thematic. We discovered quite a lot of common interests and points, so I think no question about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only can agree, and I'm very happy you're looking forward.
Okay, then I think that was a conversation worth having, and thank you very much for your active participation in that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I wish you all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so our second session is about the future of food's protein. And our second guest is Dror Tamir from Hargo Food Tech, Israel. Hi, Dror, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thank you. So I guess anybody just looking at your profile picture might have an idea of what your company is working on, but can you just please share a few words about that?
Absolutely. Our goal is about delivering protein, an alternative protein that is healthier for the environment, that is healthier for humans and animals, and that is safer and more efficient to produce. And that protein is actually grasshopper protein, because grasshoppers are an amazing animal that provide a wide range of benefits to both the humans and the environment, from a superior nutritional content all the way to a wide range of health benefits that they provide. And one more exciting fact about the grasshoppers is that this is the most widely eaten insect in the world. So 1 billion people across the world consume them today as part of their diet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you might have answered my next question, which I think is a pretty obvious one, that can you imagine that at some point in the future that 1 billion will become 6 or 7 billion?
Actually, this is not an easy question, because most of the world is not really used to eating insects in general or grasshoppers in particular, which means the yak factor is one of the greatest challenges for this new edible insect industry. However, there are some ways making this process a little bit easier. Just as an example, in the 1980s, eating raw fish in North America or Europe was not something that was acceptable, but today everyone eats sushi. So bringing the sushi into a food product and enjoying it changed the perception, and now everyone's eating them. So just taking the grasshoppers, milling them into a fine powder that contains 72% protein, providing all these health benefits, is the first way to overcome that barrier. Beside that, we are all becoming more and more aware to the impact of what we do and what we eat on the environment, on our health, and we are seeking those better alternatives. We know that eating a steak is great, but it hurts the environment. And if we expect the global population to grow and the global demand for protein to double over the coming decades, we really have to change the way we behave.
Mm-hmm. Before the session, we just had a quick chat, and you told me that I shouldn't be afraid of asking some tricky questions, so here's one. So I know that the world's population, some of those are very, very strictly following rules of their religion. So is grasshopper is in line with those rules in certain religions? Is there a problem there?
Actually, this is one of the easiest questions out there, because if you read the Bible, grasshoppers are the only insect that is approved as kosher. Just open Leviticus and you can read it. You can also open the Quran, because Muhammad the Prophet used to eat grasshoppers as well. So it is also halal for Muslims. And you can even go to the New Testament, because John the Baptist, his food was grasshoppers with honey. So for all three religions, grasshoppers are the perfect food, a survival food, a biblical food, and it's great.
So again, you might have answered my next question again, because I just wanted to ask you why grasshoppers and why not other popular insects, for instance, black soldier flies?
Oh, that's a very important question. There are a few differences between grasshoppers and other insects that are being farmed today around the world. We can find black soldier fly and mealworms and crickets. Those animals eat almost any organic matter, which means they can eat organic waste. So the risk of contamination is very high. The flavors and the taste of those insects is very distinct, and the nutritional content is not as good as it could be. They contain a lot of fat and saturated fat and cholesterol. Grasshoppers, on the other hand, are picky eaters. These guys eat only fresh grass with no pesticides, no fertilizers, so it's a very safe and a healthy product to start with. Second, they provide a superior nutritional content with over 70% protein and less than 10% fat, half of it are the omegas, omega-3 and omega-6. So it's a very healthy product. And the last part, because of their diet, grasshoppers are almost neutral in taste and flavor. So as an ingredient, you will not be able to tell that you have grasshoppers in your food. With crickets and others, unfortunately, you will be able to tell they are there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you mentioned that these grasshoppers they only eat fresh grass. So I believe you have to produce their food as well. So how do you do this in practice? So do you have like a farm where you grow grass for the grasshoppers?
Absolutely. In order to feed the grasshoppers year-round, you have to be able to produce the grass year-round at the same quality, which is not an easy thing. So we grow the grass for the grasshoppers indoors. We developed vertical farming of wheatgrass and very short cycles, and we provide fresh grass on a daily basis to our grasshoppers, 365 days a year. Now, this is a very expensive operation. And for us, the future is actually in an alternative feed. We checked a lot of alternatives, and I can tell you that we reached a proof of concept. We just finished the 5th generation of grasshoppers that are fed by only dry feed, which means we found a way to teach the grasshoppers to eat only dry feed. We taught them, instead of receiving all the water from the grass, to drink from an outer source, which was a very tricky challenge. And we are actually developing a new genetic line of grasshoppers that can feed on dry grass. Now, to explain the impact on our operation, the cost of the dry feed is 3% of the cost of the fresh grass. And in terms of labor, it reduces manpower by over 50%. We expect to implement the dry feed in our commercial farms, which you can see in the back, one of them, in 2022. And this will make us much more efficient than any other insect producer, and actually more efficient than any other animal protein producer in the world, very close to plant-based protein cost.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So, but how do you do this? Did you do some like grasshopper breeding? So did you select those that actually liked the dry grass? So how did you do this? How could you develop this 5th generation?
It's actually the same as we did with breeding the grasshoppers. We provided them a lot of good wine and music, and eventually it happened. But the real thing is, we tested tens of varieties of feed until we found what they are reacting to. We have a CTO that for over 30 years has been growing and breeding insects. This guy, we call him the insect whisperer, and he can understand what the insects are saying, if they feel good or not. On a daily basis, I receive reports if the grasshoppers are happy or not. And eventually he found a way to provide them feed that is dry. And he also found a way, because he was looking at them, he learned how you can actually serve them the water and have them drinking water from an outer source. That's pretty amazing to watch. It's unbelievable seeing grasshoppers going to water and drinking them, which they don't do in the wild like that.
Wow.
And it's a matter of listening to the animals, trying a wide range of possibilities, and eventually you also need a lot of luck.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it might be obvious for our audience, but just to double check and to confirm, so you produce these grasshoppers for human consumption and not like animal feed, like with the black soldier flies?
Absolutely. Let's start with the economics of the two. When you produce black soldier fly and you want to replace fish feed or poultry feed, you are competing with fish meal, and that price is about $1.50 per kilogram. Very low price, very challenging to produce an animal at that cost. When you are producing grasshoppers as human food, you have existing markets across Africa, Asia, Middle East, Central America. Let's take Saudi Arabia as an example. This is a market that eats a lot of grasshoppers. They consider grasshoppers as a delicacy. They call it jarad. And the cost of grasshoppers in that market can reach $300 per kilogram. That's a little bit higher than $1.50 per kilogram. So we enjoy immediately from existing markets, no need to educate the market, no competition for 11 months a year, because today the supply is based on collection in the wild, which is limited to 4 weeks a year, and very high prices and margins for us. So we can make a profit from day one.
That sounds perfect. Okay, again, a tricky question. Let's assume I have a girlfriend who is vegan. But she's just on the edge, so she doesn't want to eat like regular animals that are cute, but grasshoppers maybe. So do you think grasshoppers can be maybe an alternative protein source for vegans?
Great question. Let's split it into two. First, it's your girlfriend, so just tell her, and we know that from the research we are doing, that grasshopper protein reduces body fat, and that will be the selling point for her. However, let's talk about vegans in general, and they need to open their eyes, because vegans and vegetarians eat plants, and the farmers, in order to grow the plants, have to use pesticides and fertilizers to kill the insects that come to eat the same plants. These insects die in a nasty way, being wasted. No one is using that natural resource. And at the same time, they contaminate the soil and the water sources. If you look at our grasshopper farming, we're not using pesticides and fertilizers. We are using 100% of the animal. Everything is edible. Nothing goes to waste. And even the way we harvest the grasshoppers at the end is done in a humane way. We reduce the temperature in our facility. They fall asleep, and only then we collect them and freeze them. So there is no stress in the process. And this is actually following the recommendations of the European Union, minimal harm done to animals. So it's more humane than plant-based protein.
So you mentioned that eating grasshoppers may help in burning fat. So how does this work, and why does this work?
It's not actually burning fat. The impact is from two reasons. It's mainly the molecules, the chitin molecules that are in grasshoppers, but also in other insects as well. But grasshoppers taste better. First, they act as natural fibers, so it slows your digestion. You feel full for longer. And the second part, the chitin molecules interact with the fat molecules and extract them from your body.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you might know that this session is actually has a Q&A part, so let's jump into that. So I'm just going to read two questions from the audience. The first one is, it says, lots of people still are aware of eating products made of insects. So what do you think could help change their mind?
This is the trickiest part of the insect industry. I think that as the world is becoming more and more global, people are more and more aware to habits and customs in other countries. So if you go to Japan, you can eat a sushi called inago that contains insects. If you go to Uganda, you'll see, and during November, you'll be able to see that this is ensenene season. That's the local grasshopper that flies in billions, and they sell it everywhere, and everyone are eating them. If you go to Mexico in September, you'll be able to eat chapulines, local grasshopper, in your taco with chili and lime. So people are more and more aware. The second part, that would be probably chefs, leading chefs around the world, and also athletes that are looking into healthier and more efficient protein sources, and we are collaborating with them. They share their diet, showing how they eat the grasshoppers as a whole or as a shake. They share a lot of recipes based on the grasshoppers. And eventually, you educate the market and you change the perception. This is a long and painful process, and it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now that you mentioned chefs, the second question is just about this. So how do you think, what do you think, how will a dinner menu look like in 10 years?
Well, eventually, we will still be eating chickens. We will still be eating pigs. We'll still be eating cows. That's part of our diet. They taste great. The texture is excellent. However, about 30% of the protein intake that we used to today will shift to new alternative protein sources. We will see more plant-based protein reaching our plates. We can see it already happening. We will see algae-based protein and even a little bit of cultured meat that you grow in a lab. And you will also see the insects, not as a whole on our plates, but we'll see them as an additive, as an ingredient in a wide range of food and beverage applications.
Okay. And would you, I know that you regularly eat grasshoppers, and I listen, but I haven't asked if you have a family. So do they also eat grasshoppers if you have a family?
I'm proud to say that 100% of my family members ate grasshoppers, and this includes my wife. She was brave enough to eat them on the Israeli TV live. It includes two sons, 10 and 8 years old. One of them, the youngest one, since he was 3, has been given grasshoppers. He's the perfect presenter. And I'm also proud to say that my 1.5-year-old daughter already ate grasshoppers, not as a whole, but as in the form of a sausage made of grasshopper protein.
Great. Okay, so we have an audience of full of youngsters, so they might wonder, how did you end up starting this business? So when was the first time when you realized that, okay, grasshoppers is the thing, so and I should really produce grasshoppers?
Well, the immediate answer to that is, well, I'm an accountant, and only accountants can come up with such crazy ideas. But the real answer is that I was born in a kibbutz in Israel. My grandfather was the chairman of the kibbutz. He established 2 food companies, Galam, the largest corn processor in Israel, and Ambar, the largest feed producer in Israel. And my grandmother was the cook of the kibbutz. So food, nutrition, industry, and agriculture are in my veins. One of the stories my grandparents used to tell me as a young kid at the kibbutz was about the 1950s. At that point of time, Israel suffered from food security issues, and at the same time suffered from locust swarms, locusts are grasshoppers, flying in from Africa and destroying the crops. The kibbutz members used to run to the fields to make a lot of noise and scare the grasshoppers away. And at the same time, they saw other Jews, Yemenite Jews, coming to the same fields and collecting tons of grasshoppers to eat. So from that story, as a very young boy, I learned that grasshoppers are food for many around the world and that they are kosher. Fast forwarding over 35 years into the future, I'm a serial entrepreneur for food and nutrition. I'm learning about the protein challenge around the world, and immediately I knew that grasshoppers are the perfect solution.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so perhaps a last question. So you said that in the future you expect the grasshopper consumption to go up. So when do you think this will happen? So let's say in Europe, when do you think it will have a tangible impact on the food consumption?
I think this mainly depends not only on the startups that are penetrating this new arena, it mainly depends on the traditional large food producers. And I can tell you that all of them are looking into the insect potential. Just to share with you a few names, IKEA, we all know IKEA, that's the largest food exporter of Sweden. They announced 2 years ago that they are going to be more sustainable, and one of the most unsustainable products they sell on the stores are the meatballs made of beef. So 2 years ago, they announced that they will replace the meatballs from beef to insects. And we are discussing with them, we already have a prototype for them.
Wow.
So that's an example, because once they make a decision, try to imagine how big the impact is. And same goes to many other food producers, European and American food producers that are looking and are exploring. Many of them have pilots with us.
Mm-hmm. So it can easily happen in a couple of years' time, or maybe next year, I will just go into IKEA and I will have my meatballs and they will tell me that it's made of grasshoppers. Do you still want to take it?
Exactly. And instead of calling them Swedish meatballs, they will call them Swedish Israeli grasshoppers.
Okay, amazing. Okay, thank you very much, Dror. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and wish you all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. Our next topic is about extreme weather and shifting climate zones. And our guest is Csaba Vaszkó, who used to work at the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or better known as the WWF, the Hungarian organization, but right now he runs his own consulting firm. So welcome, Csaba. Before we get into the questions, what does your consultancy firm do? Can you just introduce that for like in a couple of sentences?
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. I also would like to welcome everyone here online. I hope you can hear me and see me well. My name is Csaba Vaszkó. I'm originally a geographer, and I've been running Greenstreams consultancies since 2017, working for governmental bodies, local municipalities, and companies involved in the energy and agriculture sectors on climate change mitigation strategies and implementation, and also climate change adaptation strategies, and not only strategy planning, but also implementation and fundraising.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. There's a large audience here full of young people, and maybe these words that you just said, like strategic advisory and planning, so it may not, at least for me, it doesn't really tell you what is your day job. So can you just help us to understand that? So how does your typical day look like?
Well, my typical day looks like that. I've been in constant relationship and contact with these clients, governmental institutes, when they are planning national programs or regional programs on how local and regional actors could and can adapt to climate change, and can promote the penetration of renewable energy sources. Or I'm also in contact with agriculture companies who are more and more experiencing, for example, climate change and extreme weather impacts, and farmers. I'm working with farmers, basically smallholders, also mid-sized farms, on how they can adapt their practices to something which is not expected or they're not expecting. Mm-hmm. And we are looking for funds together. We are looking into their practices, current practices. We are trying to set up some and develop some scenarios for the next 5 to 10 years or even longer. And we are looking for shared interest and looking for shared risk. We are focusing on mitigating risks, and we are focusing on gaining market share, and we are planning the next steps. And implementation is also always very important part of my job on the ground with them together.
Uh-huh. Okay, that sounds like quite a big of a chunk of jobs. So do you do this all by yourself, or do you have colleagues who can help you with that?
I'm working with partners. Uh-huh. I usually have 4 to 5 partners. Someone who is more involved in, for example, energy. Someone else who is more involved in agriculture, for example, livestock, and someone else who is more involved and experienced in forestry or other sectors. This is a sectorial partnership.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said that you originally was educated as a geographer. So how did you end up fighting against climate change or the impacts of the climate change?
Well, I have a science research background. I used to work for the academy for 4 or 5 years. And then I joined WWF in 2005. And at that time, my first project, my first job was linked to climate change and was linked to renewable energy. And I had to cooperate with many stakeholders. For example, regional authorities, governmental institutes, farmers, national parks, energy companies. And basically, I was the guy who was in the field together with them. And I had to find the key dots and connections. And what I had to focus on to find economic activities that can deliver as a byproduct nature conservation and climate change adaptation and mitigation. So do something which can give you money, but on the other hand, something which is good for nature and something that can help you adapt to climate change.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically almost everybody, I believe everybody heard about, the impact of the climate change, and that is like it's going to have tangible effects, and we have already seen some of that in the past years already. So my question is to you that can you give us some shocking examples, really, because I still feel that people are not really aware of what the actual hell is waiting for them if we don't pay more attention in turning this whole back. So can you just give us some real shocking things if you have a few examples?
Well, I'm focusing on Europe and I'm focusing on agriculture because we are talking about agriculture. So first of all, few industries feel the direct impact of climate change more than agriculture. As weather patterns are becoming more extreme, which means more intensive, more frequent or longer, agriculture is getting more and more vulnerable to these impacts. If you take 2018 and 2019, these 2 years were very, very extreme across Europe and in Hungary as well. We had heat waves, we had droughts, we can even see rainfall surplus in certain areas in Europe. The extreme weather events broke records in Europe, and this reinforced the importance of climate change adaptation. So in 2018 and 2019, last year and 2 years ago, we recorded very, very high temperatures, which caused heat waves and droughts that affected the agricultural production in many countries. And the key conclusion was that the agricultural sector was not well prepared for these extreme weather events. For example, in Germany experienced an approximately 20% decrease in harvest of grains in 2018, and mainly because of droughts and heat waves. And it was assessed that only a few farmers were insured against droughts. In Germany, only about 5,000 hectares of farmland were insured against drought. Why? Because it did not occur too frequently before. Or Sweden, a Nordic country in Europe, they experienced dozens of wildfires, and most of southern Sweden did not have rain for months between May and September, and June was the warmest in more than 100 years in South Sweden, and they had to put out wildfires, which is quite exceptional. And also Norway. In Norway, the farmers had to start and design and install irrigation schemes because they were not used to long and intensive droughts. And in Hungary, and this is my last example, Hungary, we experienced very, very long drought periods in 2018. Almost 90,000 hectares was affected by drought and heat waves, and there was no rain for months. And as a reaction, the government extended the irrigation season for farmers, which means that farmers could use water for irrigation at a lower price for a longer period. And there are also trends, but I don't want to go into details. I think these were my examples from the...
Yeah, and thanks for sharing all those examples. But my question really is that, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. So let's say I'm in complete denial of climate change or the impact of climate change, because those examples that you just shared, so in 2018 and 2019, I could still get my food. Okay, maybe some of the vegetables were not available on the market. Okay, then I bought something else. So, but we still know that we need to do something. So Can you just, I believe we haven't really felt the real impact. So that's the reason why I was asking some shocking examples. What could happen if we don't do something?
For example, in 2015, 5 years ago, the Hungarian agricultural sector lost 400 billion forints because of extreme weather events, because of the long droughts. It might lead, it hasn't led so far, but it might lead to higher food prices, for example, food security problems, for example, and obviously job losses in the agricultural sector. Yes, these are my 2 or 3 very quick examples. What might happen? Of why these are not happening? Why we are not why we are not experiencing this? Because usually the government and the European policy and the European budget help the farmers adapt, and there are several financial schemes that can help so that we can still receive the food that we are used to. We can still pay the same price that we are used to, and the farmers still can keep their jobs and lands that they have been cultivating or they've been managing for years. Mm-hmm. But this is a big chunk of money behind.
Okay, so that in fact would actually solve the problem that the EU or local government would just pour some more money into agriculture. So is that easy?
No, it's not easy at all. And a key question is that is the extreme weather events and the way that farmers and the agricultural sector is trying to adapt to extreme weather events and the let's say the agricultural policy, the European agricultural policy, are in line with each other? Are they in harmony with each other? And my question is no, it's not easy. The point is that on the one hand, we have extreme weather events and climate change impacts, and on the other hand, we have agricultural policy and agricultural public finance, let's say. So the European Union agricultural budget counts for more than 1/3 of the European Union budget. This is the biggest budget, the biggest among the sectors, and this is worth more than or almost 60 billion euros. And the lion's share of this budget, which is 70% of this budget, goes to the so-called income support for farmers, meaning that this is dedicated to direct payments. Direct payments means that direct payments are per hectare payments handed out on the basis that minimal environmental requirements are met on farmlands. So if you have a farm on a drained wetland, and if you are cultivating it, then you are eligible for these payments. So what is the link between extreme weather events and agricultural payments or agricultural subsidies? These payments, for example, the direct payment, is continuously driving farmers not to change their practices and to continue to cultivate their lands. Instead of making some space for water retention, some space for buffers, some agri-environmental landscape elements that may come very handy when you experience drought in a summer, for example. Or these payments are not really driving farmers, creating space for buffer strips or hedgerows that can slow runoff and reduce flood risk, or that can increase the water infiltration into groundwater bodies, and so on. Just one more thing. In Hungary, we are in a very specific situation and very weird situation because we have large areas
agriculture and other type of areas that are affected by flood, inland or excess water inundation, and droughts within a short period. So at least 3 types of, or 4 with the heat waves, extremes related to water. So one piece of land can be affected by flood, excess water inundation, and drought within 2 or 3 months. That's a very, very critical. And what I would like to emphasize is that a more or without a more adaptive agricultural subsidy system, farmers will not be able to adapt to these extreme weather events. Not only the trends, but the extreme events.
Mm-hmm. But you just said that it's actually the EU's budget that is set up the way that it subsidizes the farmers in case of things go south. So does that mean that first it has to be changed on the EU level, the EU budgeting level?
This is a very good question, and yes, this is a very complex question because when we talk about agriculture, we tend to say that farmers are responsible for climate change adaptation. But if we ask farmers, or if we ask them, they are saying that the state or the EU policy, agricultural policy, are responsible for climate change adaptation because they make the rules, they make legislation, they make subsidy schemes and public finance, so they have to make the climate change adaptation happen. In my opinion, this is a multi-stakeholder, a multi-actor exercise and issue. Farmers are usually waiting for governmental programs and EU programs, but in reality, these programs are not necessarily effective at local scale, where real farmers doing their real jobs with other people. So I would recommend that farmers should find allies and at local level, let's say at landscape level or river basin level, and cooperate with other farmers, with local municipalities, water management authorities or irrigation service providers, or companies who are buying their products. There are examples of these cooperations across Europe, and because they know everyone, together they know everyone, and I would like to emphasize that climate change never makes impacts alone. Human stresses cause problems in the first place, and climate change, such as extreme weather events, amplify these adverse impacts. So if you have a farmland, I would recommend that find your allies around you, be it a local municipality, or because they own, for example, many irrigation scheme and channel systems, or water management authorities, or companies, local or integrator companies. So farmers should not be the only actors, and EU policy is not the only and the most effective tool in the adaptation to climate change, especially at local level.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the role that you are trying to play in connecting all these partners together with the farmers is like your real mission.
Yes, absolutely. So there are several projects that I have been, or I used to be involved, but usually these partners or these stakeholders work alone, and they are not looking for shared risks and shared interests. They have different, for example, assets, tools. They have different source of money that they can use. For example, local municipalities have 50,000 kilometer long of channel system across Hungary. They're not really using it because they're not really aware of where these channels are located, but these channels could be used for water retention and help farmers, for example, in climate change adaptation, adapting to extreme water-related events. They could use these channels for greening as part of the agricultural policy. Or water management authorities could also work together with local municipalities and agricultural farmers on adapting to extreme weather events or water-related events. And also companies should step out of the fences, and they should look at their whole supply chain. And the supply chain begins with in the land where farmers are cultivating or managing their lands. So at least 4 or 5 different stakeholders and actors should cooperate, and they don't meet.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but it was a very, very interesting conversation. So thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts about this situation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, hello everyone, and our last topic for the morning session is going to be about urban farming. So we have all seen that farming has been conquering new areas. We might have already seen indoor farms or community gardens in the cities. So the key question is that, is the city the new countryside? So the key guest that I'm going to ask to talk about this topic is Kirill Zelensky, who is the CEO of Intellectual Farms. And our guest, the live guest, is, or most of them, of course, are alive, but I have with me here Gábor Rosta, who is who will introduce himself in a second. Okay?
Yeah.
And can you start just briefly introduce yourself?
I made an association of urban gardening in Budapest. We have 7 community gardens in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
It's 10 years, and they work well.
Mm-hmm. Great to hear that. And Kirill, the title says CEO of Intellectual Farms. So can you just tell us a bit more about what Intellectual Farms is?
Actually, Intellectual Farms is one of the companies which are working under brand iFarm. So what we are doing technology for vertical farming. It's mostly software, but also hardware, and we know how to build farms and how to grow food in cities.
Okay. And what we see in the background, is it a live picture or?
No, it's not live picture, but this picture made on a real farm on our farm. So on one of our farms in Siberia. And this drone is also a real one. It's flying around and making pictures, and then our system understands what happens with crops.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds very cool. So, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, that the role of the drone is to really to understand, so can it fully replace the human interaction in this system?
Actually, it would be ideal if it would fully replace, but the role of the drone is to save labor and save working hours, because one drone flying around the farm, for example, in our case, it's a 1,000 square meters farm, and one drone is every day flying around. It's saving about 700 hours of work for people during the month. So it's saving money and work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm just going to get to the main question of today. So, and I'm going to start with Kirill. Okay. So, Kirill, what do you think? How do you see the role of indoor farming in case of urban farming? So, what kind of role it could play in the future?
I would say in future, as we see future, in future it should be in every building where people are living and eating. So, and it should be as easy and as popular as personal computers. So every house should be equipped with farm, and then everywhere where we are living, we can grow food at least little bit. So it doesn't mean that we don't need outdoor farming at all, because some big things or they still will need trees or fields, etc. But some things like berries, vegetables or leafy greens, they definitely could be grown inside cities, and then it will be more healthy, more tasty, and do not harm planet. So it's kind of sustainable growing exactly in places where people are living.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you think of this, Gabor?
It is the future. It is the future.
Yeah, of course.
As I see, mostly in a rich city stage like Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, they are very far away about these projects. But today is just mostly a kind of hype. Mm. And 10 years from now, it will be a common sense everywhere.
But you mean here in Eastern Europe, but there are like more richer parts of the world?
Yes.
Already...
It's work well. It looks very fair.
And you said that you work with community gardens and you have already a couple in operation. So, and Kirill said that like some of the like leafy greens and berries can be grown in indoor farms. So how do you think that community gardens can somehow accomplish or make the whole picture complete, like by growing apples or peaches, so things that would normally can't be grown in an indoor farm?
I made my gardens in a block of flats area. And these gardens are 1,000 square meter, so not too big. And the plots are about 8-9 square meters. It's not too much. But in season, they can produce a lot. So it's well, but it's not self-sufficiency.
Uh-huh. And what do people typically grow in a parcel?
Everything. So it's very, very high biodiversity. Mm-hmm. There is just from tomato about 20 type of 10 different types. So because the plot is small, they start to make special things. There is a garden, I call it garden competition. My tomato is bigger, my carrot is longer, and things like this. But this is not self-sufficiency. It's a 10% gardening, 90% community life.
Uh-huh. I see.
And the main purpose of these community gardens is the community development.
So actually, the way I hear from you is that these are like two separate activities, while the indoor farms are more for producing food locally, community gardens are more like a hobby or more like a social activity.
Beautying the neighborhood, and there is a lot of educational activities, biological lesson in the garden, and there are a lot of schools coming and watching the garden. There are some lessons and trip around the garden. So it's more community stuff
Okay.
than producing.
Okay. So, Kirill, a question to you, because Gabor mentioned that lots of specialty fruits and vegetables can be grown in community gardens. So what is the most exotic plant that you have grown so far in your indoor farms?
Actually, in indoor farms, most exotic, I think, okay, it's two types of exotic things. First, it was watermelons, which were still small, but real watermelons. So it's I think nobody tried to grow indoor except us. And another one is wasabi. So it's also quite exotic, and it's difficult to grow at all, and only probably possible to grow indoor. At least here in Finland, there is no possibility to grow other way.
And you said that the picture of the farm in your background is a farm in Siberia. So you work in Finland, but you also work in Siberia. So how large is your operation?
We now have about 60 people in 6 countries. So we have very big R&D hub in Siberia, in Russia, in Novosibirsk. But we are located in Finland, and we have people in Luxembourg, in Netherlands, also in Middle East, and we are selling now in Europe and Middle East and in Russia. And so it's quite actively growing, I would say.
Okay. And because when people think about Siberia, you don't really think about large cities, but I know that there are a couple. So where exactly is your farm in Siberia?
In Novosibirsk. It's exactly one of the biggest city in Siberia. And it's very good because also it has a university which is very good in knowing crops, in agriculture. So Novosibirsk is also a university city. It was created as a city of science.
Okay.
Which helps us a lot.
I guess you can't really have community gardens there, so that's maybe so have you ever thought of operating these indoor farms as like a similar way, like Gabor does, in a community way?
Actually, I'm speaking about this here in Finland, and where we have this our own farm in Espoo in Finland. We also have kind of community activities, and mostly they're about outdoor farming. But we're now discussing with guys how to organize it indoor. But indoor, it's quite okay. In our case, it's quite difficult because our technology means that it should be totally indoor and totally controlled. So it's more or less not for community, but it's for almost nobody, because our farm doesn't need a lot of people. In my farm, it's only 2 persons are working, coming once per week. So it's no need to be kind of community because it's growing itself.
Okay. Gabor, you wanted to say something?
Yes, but Kirill does it's kind of agro-robotica. This is the future. So the population lives in cities, and you can see tractors and agriculture machines without people on it, and computer run it. And the future will be this. And also the future will be something about lab meat, the artificial meat. It will be a big relief for the planet if we have not a lot of pigs, cows, chickens, but the meat will grow in laboratory, because that's a very, very dirty business. So all the agriculture, as I see, we had a technical revolution in the last 20, 30 years. And this technical revolution goes into the agriculture, absolutely. And the future of the agriculture is unbelievable different than we just planning and watering the plants. It's over. It's almost over.
You said you have 7 community gardens,
Yes.
all in Budapest?
One in Szentendre.
And how did you manage to find the funds to open these? Are these all like your own gardens, or did you have any subsidies from the districts, or how did
The local government gave the land, the money to build it, and they pay for the community development. So it's a complete project, and 2 or 3 years later, I can leave the gardens because they are perfect communities. They can self-ruling, and they will live over me. I mean, I will far, I will dead, but they will still alive and still working.
And how did you find this passion? How did you end up like creating community gardens?
What do you mean?
How did you so what was the reason you started to why did you start your first community garden?
I was teaching crisis management, and 10 years ago, the 2008 crisis, I making a presentation for students about the 29 Great Depression, and I found the crisis gardens, war gardens, and I realized there is nothing about this in Hungary. And it was 3 years to make the first garden, because all the local governments, the rules, everything was just unknown, so we had to fight a lot. But when the first garden is opened, it's became a kind of fashion, and it's just spread like hell. So in Budapest is about 40 garden now.
Wow. And you said you are a teacher.
I was.
And you, like you were a biology teacher?
No. It's a communication department.
Okay. Because it's quite funny that some of the people who I've spoken to, basically, I haven't really spoken to anybody who was in farming before he did something in this space. So, Kirill, are you an example? Are you an exception? So, have you had any background in agriculture before starting this business?
Not at all. I was okay. I got education as manager, business education, and then I was always working with IT, telecom, security. So it's totally different from agriculture.
It's very nice to.
But now even I can grow food here.
It's very nice to see. I met a lot of people like you. So completely different background, but it's a kind of intermediate stuff, and finally the clever guys end up with agriculture.
Okay. Okay. So Kirill, you said that you work in management. So when did you first start to interact with indoor farming?
Oh, it's very funny. Actually, this company organized, and first idea come up to my friend. So he's also software development company director, and first it was the game on mobile device, which was Farm Frenzy. It was not real farm, but it was a kind of a game about farming. And then after 10 years, he come up with idea to build a real farm and to make it automatically to grow food automatically on his home, on his greenhouse. And then it starts everything from here. And also he invited me and said, okay, let's try to do something with real life, not just with software security. And then I was asking him, is it possible to grow wasabi here because I love sushi? And he answered me, yes, it's possible. And then I joined the company.
Okay.
And now I'm growing wasabi.
Okay. So you said that the farm in the background is located in Novosibirsk, but where exactly within the city? So is it in the city center? Is it in like the basement of a building?
It's close to city center. I would say they have kind of scientific park or something. It's in Russian. It's Akadem Gorodok. It's exactly place where university is located. So, and it's one of the university buildings. They're located here.
And who is? Do you sell your fruits and vegetables to local customers? I mean, I guess local customers, but to restaurants or normal everyday people?
Restaurants and supermarkets. And in supermarkets, it's selling surprisingly on let's say almost twice higher price than normal things like premium price, because it's more healthy, more tasty, it's smelling good, it's like it's, you know, it's fresh, it's still alive when it's on shelves.
Okay. So this is a for-profit business, but yours, I guess, it's totally non-profit.
Totally non-profit, and also the vegetables not forbidden to sale. Everything is just for themselves.
Okay, so everybody has to eat whatever he grows, even if it doesn't taste good.
Yes.
So do you provide any professional support? Is there somebody who teaches?
Yes. For example, all gardens must be planned by a landscape designer. It's
Really?
very important, very important. It's a very busy community place. It must be safe and perfect for producing. And also I have teachers from university, the agriculture university, and they make every starting of a garden, there is a lesson, five days lesson about gardening and how it will goes. And also we have a vegetable doctor. I don't know the English verb. So if any kind of trouble started in the garden, they come and say what can do. And we have also compost teaching. So it's ecological stuff.
Okay, so does that mean that if somebody wants to join your community, first he has to go through this training?
At first, they have to wait.
Okay.
There is a very long waiting list.
Really?
So
how long is the waiting list?
2 or 3 times of the garden.
Wow.
So it's a lot. This city should manage about 100 or 200 community gardens, but there are not enough space. The problem is.
I see. That sounds very interesting. Okay. Kirill, back to you. A question. You said that the people in Novosibirsk, they pay more for your vegetables. So is it like the same everywhere, or do you specifically target those locations where you believe you can make a larger profit because people can't really access locally grown vegetables?
Actually, what we're doing, we're trying to sell technology. We're not selling vegetables. So we're selling vegetables only from our own farms, which we're doing to make tests, to make growing recipes, to make our technology better. And occasionally in Russia, yes, people can understand that, okay, this is better and this is a premium quality and they're ready to pay more. In Finland, for example, people are not ready to pay more. They mostly don't care about quality and taste, and they're not paying more, and we're selling at the same price as normal greens. But we're still selling technology here. In other countries, it depends from country to country, and also from the place or our real customer for whom we are making the farms. Because if we are doing farms for example, for restaurants, they're not selling greens at all like in supermarkets. They're selling it as part of dishes. So we don't know what is the price difference between normal dishes or dishes with our greens. If it's supermarkets, they're deciding themselves how to sell. In our customers in other countries, they just decide themselves on which price they're going to sell greens. But in general, it's better than normal greens because it's grown locally, it's super tasty, and also it's grown without any kind of pesticide. So it's more healthy than normal greens on shelves what you can get in supermarkets.
May I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, how many times you can make harvesting in a year?
It depends from greens.
Yeah.
For example, with strawberry, we can get it 5 times per year, comparing to 1 on nature. And if it's about salads and small crops like other leafy greens or herbs, it's something like 30% faster than normal. In tomatoes, it's also about 30% faster than normal. So and then you can calculate. We cannot, of course, we cannot make it totally different like it's by nature, but
Yes.
make it faster by creating ideal terms, ideal conditions inside. Then we can do it faster, more, and even tastier. And sometimes I even can play with test with amount of sugar, vitamins, just by adding or reducing light or changing temperature, etc. So it's very interesting when you have totally controlled environment. You're like a god.
Okay.
When you will go to the moon and to the Mars, Kirill will be the
Yeah,
first.
exactly. It can be on the moon. It can be everywhere because also we are totally indoors, so we even have no any connections of air with outdoor. So we have only air indoor. It's circulating, and it's we control humidity, temperature, daylight, CO2 level, everything.
Yes, yes. This is the future.
Okay. Gabor, a question to your community garden. So do people have to pay to use the community?
There are a garden fee, but this is stay in the garden. Every year they have to pay some kind of water and tools broken. It's 3,000 forint a year, so it's nothing.
Which is like 10 euros or,
Yeah.
okay, now it's 8.
Yes, so it's basically free.
Okay. And you said you have 7 gardens in Budapest and one or
Santander.
yeah. So do you plan to like cover the whole country at one point?
No, I don't want to make more community gardens. I'm working on making urban farms.
Uh-huh.
Urban farms means 10,000 square meter. It's a suburb of the city. Good soil. In my gardens, all the plots are box gardens because the urban soil is just bad as possible can be. So it's a kind of box gardening, and I want to make 150 gardeners in 10,000 square meter farm, and they can get 30, 50 square meter plots. And it will be starting some kind of self-sufficiency.
But how will it be different from your current gardens?
It's not in the city. It's more producing than community life, and it's more social. So the fresh vegetables every year 20% more expensive, very, very, very expensive. And people can save a lot of money. In the Great Depression, later they counted and they said every dollar they invested in increases garden, it's produced $5 for the gardeners. It's the best social help can be. And also there are a lot of externalia. It's the other goods has better, less medicine, some kind of community, some kind of doing stuff. So there is no more interesting stuff for me in the making community gardens because I made 7. It's good, it's nice, they're working. Urban farm will be the next future step for me.
Okay. Maybe a last question to that. So how did you, because obviously a larger territory, a larger area costs more money. So do you also do this with the help of the local district, or is it something that you are looking for investors?
I'm looking for European Union money. So I make contract with local governments in Budapest and outside cities. We make agreement about creating urban farms. And then when I will have 5, 6, 7 contract with them, I can go to the European Union to say, this is a very good social, green, and agricultural kind of project. So please help.
Okay, I see. Kirill, so do you try to follow a similar approach? So are you working also out of some EU subsidies, or do you have professional investors, venture capital firms? So, or is this also only your private investment?
No, this investment done by our friends and also by several venture capitals companies, one from United States and three from Europe. And I am looking for more investment because my developing technology, yes, I have customers, but still I growing very fast and I trying to grow even faster. Mm-hmm. So I also looking for investors, and we're also trying to work with European government, also this Green Deal initiatives. And this one, by the way, we can do together with you about Budapest. So will be very interesting to try to cooperate. And besides the fact that we already have one partner in Budapest.
Really?
Yeah, I have an agreement with a company called TrueVec. And they're building vertical farms, and we're cooperating into integrating our software into their solution. Mm-hmm. So they have hardware and they know how to build vertical farms already, and we're trying to go together to customers because we cannot do everything myself. It's just not possible.
Yeah. Okay, and so do you have any other? Because you said Budapest, you already operate in 6 countries, so. And you said that you might be interested in cooperation with Budapest. So are you targeting any other countries in the region?
Yes, of course. We are working with whole Europe, and we have already partners in some countries. I would say most promising partnerships are in Switzerland and Hungary, and then also we have some partners in Spain, in Italy, in other countries, and even in Australia. So it's man, just trying to grow as fast as possible, but we can only do that through partnerships.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gabor, would you consider an indoor farm if you could figure out a mutually beneficial agreement and cooperation with Kirill?
Yes, why not? But I'm mostly working with people, not robots.
Sorry, say that?
I'm working mostly with people, not gardeners, mm-hmm. Not gardener robots.
Yeah. Okay.
Not all of us are robots.
Yes. Future will be the agro-robotic. Yes.
Okay. And Kirill, so your farms are all. So I guess you have to place this in larger cities. But do you have any exception to that so far?
Yeah, I would say we're building now farm in Andorra. So our customers, so Andorra is quite small country, quite small city, and it's still interested in our farm. So it's and then what is smaller ones? I don't know which was smaller. So it's still interesting because we can build farms, also big farms and small farms. And smaller, our farm starting from 10 square meters. So mm-hmm. it still will be automated, still will be managed by computer, but it's no matter which size. And then small farms you can put into your house on basement, and it will still work. So then you don't need to be in big city actually to grow.
Okay. Okay, we are running out of time. So any closing remarks, Gabor, anything you want to share with the audience?
No, thank you to be here. Thank you, invite me.
Thanks for sharing your story. Kirill, anything from you?
Same here. Thank you for inviting us. It's very interesting to speak and listen.
Okay, then thanks for coming and thanks for taking part. And for the audience, we are going for a short lunch break, and we will see you again in the afternoon. Thank you very much, everybody.